When the Petrov family moved to a new house, they were happy to leave the hustle and bustle of the city behind. The house on the outskirts was spacious and old, with high ceilings, wooden floors, and even a mysterious attic. It was an ideal place for a quiet life, where their children could run in the yard and they could spend evenings in a cozy family circle. Once, while unpacking things in the attic, Sophia, the eldest daughter of the Petrovs, found an old doll. It was relatively large, with porcelain legs and handles, and the hair looked ancient, with slightly worn curls. The doll had blue eyes that seemed to look straight into her soul, and elegant clothes of a white dress that had already darkened a little with time. Sophia brought the doll downstairs and showed it to her mother. "Mom, look what I found," she said with curiosity in her eyes. "Oh, this doll must have been left over from the previous owners," replied the mother, trying to contain her mild surprise. The doll looked a little creepy, but Sophia thought it was a good find. Sophia decided to put the doll on the shelf in her room. She had no intention of playing with her, but something about her appearance fascinated the girl. Her appearance, that slight cold look. The first few days, nothing strange happened. The family was busy settling in a new house. But a week after the doll settled on the shelf, Sophia began to notice something strange. One evening, when she entered her room, it seemed to her that the doll was sitting a little differently. She seemed to change her position, turning her head slightly to the side. The girl thought that maybe she just didn't pay attention to it before. The next night, Sophia was going to bed when she heard a slight sound. Something moved on the shelf. She turned her head and saw that the doll was no longer sitting straight, but was leaning forward, looking directly at her. Sophia felt a chill run down her spine, but decided it was just her imagination and put the doll back in its place. At night, Sophia woke up from the feeling that someone was in the room. The darkness that enveloped the room was heavy and cold, but something glinted faintly in the corner. It was the doll's eyes. She was lying on the floor as if someone had just thrown her off the shelf. "Who did it?" Sophia whispered, not expecting an answer. She picked up the doll and placed it on the table, trying to calm herself down. But that night she could no longer sleep. Something was wrong with the doll, and Sophia began to feel afraid every time she was alone with it. In the morning, she told her parents about the strange events. The mother decided that it was all just a coincidence and took the doll to the attic so that Sophia would no longer be afraid. But that same night, Sophia heard a whisper, barely audible, but distinct. It sounded from the attic. "I want to play," came from the darkness, quietly but persistently. The whisper was clear, as if someone was speaking the words right next to her ear. Sophia held her breath and listened as the voice repeated again, "I want to play." She felt that it was a doll and realized that this find was not ordinary. The doll wanted more than just standing on the shelf. The next day, Sophia decided to go to the attic and look at the doll. She felt she had to do something to stop it. When she went up to the attic, the doll was lying in the middle of the room, and her face looked different, as if her smile had become wider and her eyes more alive. Sophia didn't know what to do next, but she had a feeling that the doll wouldn't stop until she found someone to play with. And then she realized that perhaps this game would be far from innocent. Sophia was standing in the attic, holding a doll in her hands. Her cold porcelain fingers seemed to cling to the girl, although it should not have been possible. Her heart was pounding, and the air in the attic was getting heavier. Sophia decided to put the doll down, trying to get rid of the feeling that something was wrong. When she returned to her room, she found a note on the bed that she had not seen before. On the paper was written in smooth but childlike letters, "Want to play? I'm waiting." Sophia felt a chill run through her body. She did not write this note, and no one else could have entered her room. She showed the note to her mother, but she only smiled. "You must have accidentally written it yourself and forgotten it," said the mother, not paying attention to what had happened. "You were nervous because of the move, that's all." But Sophia knew that this was not the case. Something was clearly wrong with the doll. She decided to try to get rid of it. She picked up the doll and carried it out into the yard. There, she decided to throw the doll into the trash can, thinking that would be the end of it. But the next morning, when Sophia woke up, she saw the doll back in her room, sitting in the same place from which it was taken. Sophia felt her breath catch, and in her head, How is this possible? Who could bring her back? That night, the whispers returned. It became louder and clearer. I want to play, Sophia. This voice echoed from all corners of the room, as if it was spoken by many voices at once. Sophia tried to cover her ears, but the whispers made their way through her mind, preventing her from falling asleep. She decided to go downstairs to her parents, but when she opened the bedroom door, she saw a doll right in front of her. She was lying on the floor, having changed her position again. This time her head was turned and her eyes were looking directly at Sophia. She had a creepy smile on her face, as if she knew the girl wouldn't run away. Sophia stepped back, and the doll seemed to be even closer. She felt her legs give way and she fell, but managed to grab the phone to call her mother. Her hands were shaking, but she was able to dial the number. "Mother, come here, please," Sophia whispered, barely holding back tears. After a few minutes, the mother appeared in the room, but the doll was gone. She looked at Sophia and doubt was visible in her eyes. "Where's the doll you're talking about?" "She is not here," said the mother, looking around the room. Sophia looked around in confusion. The doll that was here just a moment ago is gone. But she knew it wasn't a hallucination. Something was wrong with this doll. She didn't just want to play. She wanted much more, and Sophia felt that this was only the beginning. Sophia could not shake the feeling that the doll had not disappeared forever. All the next day, the girl was restless, avoiding being alone in her room. She felt like there was something lurking around every corner watching her, even as she tried to convince herself that it was all in her head. In the evening, the parents were busy working in another room, and Sophia was left alone again. She was sitting on the couch in the living room when she heard a faint sound of footsteps. Her heart stopped and then began to beat faster. She understood that the sound was coming from the attic. She hesitantly got up and went towards the attic. Her heart was pounding and she could barely focus on her steps. She opened the door to the attic and began to climb the creaky stairs. Her eyes slowly adjusted to the darkness, and she saw the faint silhouette of a doll sitting in the middle of the attic. Her head was turned directly at the girl. The doll was holding a piece of paper in her hands. Sophia slowly came closer, barely holding back her fear. She took the paper back and it read again, "Time to play, Sophie." Her hands shook as she saw the doll turn its head, looking straight at her, even though it shouldn't have been capable of such movements. Sophia jumped back in horror, trying to understand what was happening. But the doll did not retreat. Her cold look seemed to pierce the girl and words began to sound in her head. "I've waited so long," whispered a voice in her mind. "No one wanted to play with me." Sophia felt that her body stopped obeying her. Her legs seemed to be attached to the floor, and the coldness enveloped her whole body. The doll didn't just want to play. She wanted power over Sophia. The girl realized that she had to do something immediately. She broke out of this paralyzing state and ran downstairs, closing the attic door behind her. Her breathing was ragged and tears began to roll down her cheeks. She knew she should tell her parents, but they no longer believed her. They thought it was all a figment of the imagination due to the stress of the move. Sophia did not sleep that night. She was sitting on her bed, clutching a flashlight in her hands and trying not to close her eyes. She knew the doll was in the attic, but she couldn't figure out what to do. The whispers are back, barely audible, but as creepy as ever. "Play with me, Sophia. I know you hear me." This time, the whispers weren't just in her head. It was coming right from under the door of her room, and Sophia knew that the doll was not going to stop. She opened her eyes to see the door to her room slowly open. In the darkness, she saw a shadow, and the doll appeared on the doorstep. Sophia felt the cold wash over her again, but she wasn't going to give up. She stood up sharply and pointed the flashlight directly at the doll. The light shone on the porcelain face, and for a moment the doll seemed to freeze, then slowly retreated back into the darkness, out of sight. Sophia knew that this was only a temporary measure. The doll will not disappear just like that. She had a plan, and now Sophia had to find a way to stop this creepy creature for good. Sophia woke up with a feeling of anxiety. She knew she couldn't take it anymore. The doll had to be destroyed, but how? She decided to find the answers herself. All these stories about cursed objects, about spirits that attach themselves to dolls, suddenly became not so fictional. Sophia spent the day in the library looking for old books about curses and the supernatural. She found a section devoted to vintage dolls and magic. In one of the books, there was a mention of the rituals of binding the soul to the object. The doll could have been created to hold a soul or a remnant of some power, and that soul needed live interaction to keep it from disappearing. Sophia learned that the most effective way to get rid of such a doll is to destroy it in a fire, but this must be done with a special intention, full of determination. If the spirit senses fear or hesitation, it may simply return and find a new victim. The girl realized that she had to be very careful because the doll seemed able to understand her every intention. Returning home, Sophia felt the tension that permeated the air. She knew that the doll was already waiting for her. She carefully climbed into the attic, holding a box of matches and a small can of gasoline that she had taken from the garage. Her heart was beating very fast, and only one thing sounded in her head. This must be finished today. The attic was dark, and the cold pierced her to the bones. She saw the doll sitting in the same place where she had left it yesterday. But now the doll was holding another note, and this time the text was written in red. "You can't run away, Sophie. We're playing until the end." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine, but she couldn't let herself back down. She opened the can and began to pour gasoline around the doll, then poured the rest directly on her. The doll seemed helpless, but her eyes followed the girl's every move. As Sophia lit the match, whispers began to fill the room again. "You can't!" The voice was quiet but filled with rage. "You are weak." Sophia mustered all her resolve as she held a lit match over the doll. "I'm not playing with you anymore," she said, her voice not shaking. She threw a match on the doll. The gasoline ignited instantly, and the flame engulfed the porcelain surface. The doll seemed to shake, and Sophia heard the whisper turn into a cry that dissolved in the crackling of the fire. The doll's eyes seemed to begin to change, as if there was some living panic in them. But Sophia did not back down. She watched the doll slowly burn until it was nothing but ashes. As the flames died down, Sophia felt that the tension that reigned around began to gradually disappear. She came down from the attic, feeling extremely tired, but at the same time relieved. She knew she had made the right choice, even if it was extremely difficult. That night, Sophia slept soundly for the first time in a long time. No whispers, no creepy feelings. The house was finally calm, and Sophia felt that she could finally start living without fear. But she knew the story would stay with her forever, as a reminder that not everything is as simple as it seems. After Sophia destroyed the doll, she felt a great sense of relief. The house was eerily quiet for the next few days, and for the first time in a long time she was able to feel safe. The whispers no longer bothered her, and no one walked around the house at night. She thought it was over. But one day when she came home after school, Sophia noticed something strange. The window in the attic was open again, although she definitely remembered that she had closed it. Fear gripped her, but she decided not to panic. Perhaps the window was simply not closed well, and the wind blew it open. She went up to the attic, but did not find anything suspicious. Only a cold breeze blew through the room, and some ashes from the burnt doll still remained on the floor. She carefully examined everything around her and decided that it was just a coincidence. That same evening, Sophia decided to remove the ashes. She took a scoop and began to sweep up the remains of the burnt doll when she suddenly felt something strange. Her fingers went numb, and she felt as if the ashes were coming to life under her touch. She stepped back, and her heart began to beat faster. The ash seemed to spread across the floor, creating incomprehensible symbols. Sophia felt the cold fear return. She couldn't believe her eyes, but the words, "You didn't stop me," began to form in front of her from the ashes. She took a step back, barely holding back her panic. This is impossible. The doll was destroyed, and the spirit had to leave this world. But the words written in the ashes seemed clear, and a sense of presence that Sophia had almost forgotten filled the room again. That same evening, she decided to tell her parents everything that had happened. She knew they wouldn't have believed her before, but now she couldn't be alone with that fear anymore. She told them about the doll, about the whisper, and how she tried to destroy it. Her mother looked at her in disbelief but saw the fear in her daughter's eyes. "Sophie, we have to do something," she said, and her father agreed. They decided to invite a priest to consecrate the house. Sophia felt that this might be the only way to finally get rid of this horror. The priest came the next day. He was an elderly man with a kind and calm look, but even he sensed something unusual about the house when he entered. He went through all the rooms, praying and sprinkling holy water. When he reached the attic, the air grew heavier, and Sophia felt that even the priest was worried. He began to pray louder, and the ashes that remained on the floor began to smoke. "There is something dark here," said the priest, "and it does not want to leave this house." He continued to pray, and the air in the room grew colder and cooler, as if some invisible force resisted his words. Sophia felt that something was pressing on her, but she stood by, not leaving. She knew she had to be here until the end. Finally, after a long prayer, the priest stopped and said, "I think we managed to free the house, but remember, this darkness remains around us. It is always looking for a new weakness to return." Sophia didn't know if it was really over, but the house felt calmer. She knew that this experience would stay with her forever, reminding her that not everything in the world can be explained by logic. The doll had left its mark on her life, and Sophia now understood how important it was not to let fear take control of her. And though the house was quiet again, Sophia knew it wasn't just a game. It was a warning about how deep and dangerous the darkness that hides in the most ordinary things can be.